Welcome everybody to the Senior Concerns Seminar Series. I'm Martha Shapiro and I'm the Director of Programs at Senior Concerns. For those of you that might not be familiar with our programs, our core services are our Caregiver Support Center, where we provide caregiver support groups and one-on-one caregiver consultations. We also provide the Meals on Wheels program for Thousand Oaks and Newbury Park. And we run an adult daycare program, which is currently still on pause, but we're happy to provide information and tours so that we're ready when we feel that it is safe to reopen that program. We also have senior advocates that are available to answer any sort of resource, benefits, housing, any question that you can think of. So please give us a call or check out our website if there's any way that we can support you and your family. So today's seminar, I'm really excited and interested to hear about. It is titled Update on Alzheimer's Disease Research and Clinical Trials, and it's presented today by Monica Moore, who's the Community Health Program Manager with the Mary S. Easton Center for Alzheimer's Disease Research at UCLA, and she is also the co-director of training and education activities for the UCLA California Alzheimer's Disease Center. So we really appreciate having Monica here with us today, and I will turn it over to her so we can get to the main event. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A while she's speaking today. So Monica, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha. And thank you everybody for being here, taking some time out of your day to spend with us. So I really do appreciate that. So we are talking about Alzheimer's disease research, and at the very end, I'll talk a little bit about some clinical trials and things that we are doing at UCLA, as well as ones that are happening all over, just again, to give you an idea as to what's the area of Alzheimer's research, what are we looking at, what is sort of in the forefront of trying to figure out this disease. So the Easton Center, we are the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We are one of 10 state designated California Alzheimer's disease centers. We have a medical clinic where people can come and get a proper diagnosis. We have our researchers in their labs trying to figure out this disease. We have a very robust clinical trials program. And then we also have another arm where we do education pieces like this and caregiver support groups. And this is all through the CADCs. So we're very happy to be able to do this. Again, some of the great things that we have seen in the past 18 months is that we're able to do presentations like this all over. Since we are Westwood located, not sure if there would actually be this opportunity if we didn't have Zoom. So I'm very grateful to it. And again, for all of you to join us today. So I do have a lot of information. This is a 1-hour talk and it is jam-packed. So hang in there with me and we'll get through it. Again, please ask questions, put them in the Q&A feature. Martha and I will be monitoring that throughout the talk. And if some are appropriate during my presentation, I'll get to them then. If not, they'll definitely be addressed at the very end. So this is roughly our outline, what I'm going to talk about today. Talk about risk factors for Alzheimer's, research that is happening in terms of modifying these. Like, how can we change our own health, and how can we try to reduce our risk of developing Alzheimer's or another dementia? We'll talk about FDA treatments. I will, of course, talk about the new Alzheimer's medication, Educab, and to see, try to answer some questions regarding that. Trials, and then how they work. So that's roughly a lot of information for 1 hour. So the first thing I always like to talk about, just bringing in sort of, as we say, level setting, making sure people realize really the true scope of the world of Alzheimer's disease, how it really does impact and affect millions and millions of people, realizing that lots of people don't talk about it. There's still shame, there's still stigma that is associated with any sort of cognitive loss or cognitive problems. So we don't talk about it in the way that our society does talk about other illnesses. But if we look at it, Alzheimer's disease is the leading cause of what we call a neurodegenerative dementia. That means that it gets worse over time. Currently here in the United States, there's 6.2 million Americans with Alzheimer's. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the US and 4th here in California. Again, we have a large older adult population, which definitely is one of the contributing reasons or factors in that statistic. And the one that I always like to highlight here is that and hold on, give me a second. Here's my laser pointer. That it's the only cause of death in the top 10 that cannot be prevented, cured, or even slowed down. So, we know what to do about heart disease. We know certain types of cancers, we can cure them. We can try to prevent them. Lung cancer, one of your greatest risk factors is smoking. But with Alzheimer's disease, we don't have that yet. So I always like to highlight this just because of the severity of it and how it really is an issue that needs to be addressed and to be talked about. Obviously, it's really expensive. $2.77 billion a year in healthcare costs just here in the United States alone. So when we think about the prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, we do think about how almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. So we are seeing disparities in the way that Alzheimer's affects people. Either women are the ones who have Alzheimer's disease, or they're also the caregivers. So it affects women from two different sides. One is people with the disease, as well as the other ones who are responsible for the caregiving of a loved one, a spouse, a parent, etc. We also have noticed a lot of disparities with Alzheimer's disease in terms of how it affects minority populations. So older African Americans are about twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's or other dementias, especially vascular dementia. And Hispanics are about 1.5 times more likely. So again, looking at these numbers and realizing how, and I think we've seen this a lot in the past year with COVID as well, this disparity world, and how it isn't just an even playing field across the board. So we're seeing this a lot with Alzheimer's disease as well. So when we look at the clinical stages of Alzheimer's disease, this is one of my favorite slides. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide. So when we think about the world of Alzheimer's disease, look at this image. And so at the bottom here, we have a clinical disease stage. This is where people are cognitively normal, mild cognitive impairment. That's what MCI stands for. And then when they actually go into a phase of dementia. On this other axis, we look at the biomarker magnitude. So this is what I'll talk a little bit about. So with Alzheimer's disease, there's two main hallmarks of the disease. There are these amyloid plaques that most likely you have heard of. And then there's also these neurofibrillary tangles, also known as tau. So these are the two main hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. So while a person is still cognitively normal, so again, look at the bottom axis here. You see how this red line really starts to increase. And this is their levels of beta amyloid. So it is increasing in their brains to a point where it is above and beyond normal. We all have it in our brains, but for some people, it stays and it accumulates and it doesn't get cleared out every day. So we see this really starting to increase while someone is still cognitively normal. They're not experiencing any changes. Their loved ones have no idea what's happening. They don't know that there's any deficits. Then you look at the next line, the blue line here, and you realize this is where the tau or the tangles are starting to form. They also are starting to form at a pretty quick rate while someone is still cognitively normal. So I find this really interesting because this is the time of life when people aren't even thinking of Alzheimer's disease. They're not thinking of memory loss. They're not thinking of any sort of cognitive problem. Yet the two hallmarks of the disease are starting to build. We even look and we even notice that brain structure starts to change while someone is still cognitively normal. So years ago, when we would think about research and clinical trials, people would have to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease to be a part of a trial. Well, if someone was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, according to this slide, they would be way over here, off the charts. But if you notice, their amyloid plaque would be really high, their tau would be high, their brain structure would have completely started to change, as well as now their memory and their clinical function. So in terms of making a difference with this disease, what we want is to get people here. We'll talk about that a bit throughout this presentation. So I like to show this. I show this slide later as well, just as that refresher, because I think it really paint a good picture of the changes that happen in our brains, even while we don't notice. So if you think about other risk factors and contributors to Alzheimer's disease, here's our little brain here with our amyloid plaque and our tau. And so lots of these factors here in the purple. These are ones that we know, right? We know that aging is our greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Obviously, genetics are going to play some role as well, just because we get our genes from our parents. So if you have two parents who have high cholesterol, you have a greater chance of having high cholesterol. If you have two parents with Alzheimer's disease, your chance of getting Alzheimer's is going to be more than someone who doesn't have it anywhere in their family. Again, just basic genetics, not talking about a true genetic link in terms of a gene mutation. So we also are realizing too, lots of factors that we can control also contribute to our Alzheimer's disease risk. Diet, exercise, smoking, again, taking care of your own vascular health, which like blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol. Over here, environment. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this as well, talking about the role of air pollution and Alzheimer's disease risk. And something that we've seen so much in this past 18 months, with COVID, with the stay-home orders, with the social isolations that so many people have really experienced, we're realizing that this area of social interaction, it hasn't happened. So people either who have Alzheimer's have progressed faster, people who are maybe in the early stages, they progress a little bit faster because they're not being socially stimulated. Their brains aren't working in the same way. We realize that socialization is so important. We are social creatures. And so this is something as well that definitely is a risk factor that can contribute to one's Alzheimer's disease risk. Sleep, and again, I'll talk a little bit about that more as well. So we look at this, these are more controllable factors, things that we really can do something about. And we could do things about them now, no matter how old you are. You could be 85 years old and be here today, and you could still work on some of these factors that could then help with your Alzheimer's disease risk. Some other areas of research, especially looking at pathogens and toxins either in our air or in our environment. A lot of studies going on about the gut microbiome. I think easily 5-7 years ago, no one would have thought about gut health. Like, what's gut health? But now you see commercials, probiotics, talking about the flora and the fauna of your body. And this is actually something now that they're realizing. Again, whatever you eat, however your stomach processes it, it also affects your brain. You are one body, even despite years of maybe being treated medically from the neck down. We are all connected, and the brain really is a big part of all of this. Also looking at some people's just innate immunity in their systems, inflammation, of course, and then hormones, especially for women and gender. We're thinking about menopause. So this all plays a role in one's Alzheimer's disease risk. So when we think about hormones, we think about women, especially with menopause and the changes that women's bodies go through, which is ultimately more than a man's body throughout their life. So when we think about Alzheimer's disease and genetic risk, there is this gene called APOE4. So there are 3 versions of this gene. There's APOE2, 3, and 4. So we all have copies of this gene. Either, you get a copy from mom and you get a copy from dad. And you can have any sort of combination. You can have 2 E2s or 2 E4s or an E2 and an E4. Again, whatever your parents have and how they pass that on to you. So, but where researchers have seen an increase in terms of risk is with the E4 version of this gene. So women have a basic increase of 4 times if they have 1 copy of E4. So let's say they have an E4 and an E3. But if they have 2 copies of the gene, their risk is increased 10 times. But with men, that is not the same ratio. Men have no increased risk with 1 copy and only 4 with 2. So there's obviously a role of hormones that is that affects APOE4. So this is, let's say, when people talk about the Alzheimer's gene, I always use my air quotes on that one, because we're not necessarily, this isn't predictive. It is just suggestive and talks about your risk. So you could be a woman with 2 copies of E4 and never go on to develop Alzheimer's disease. You could be a man with no copies of E4 and go on to develop Alzheimer's disease. So it's not predictive. So, through 23andMe or some of these other genetic tests, they can test your E4 status. And that could tell you if you have APOE4 and if you have 1 or 2 copies. But it doesn't help you in the world of knowing if you are or are not going to develop Alzheimer's. So I always like to just put that out there in terms of like, it's not predictive. And I think people want that in some ways, but I think in some ways people don't, because they're afraid of what it could be. And also imagine if you had 2 E4s and you lost your keys and then you put something in the wrong place, right? You would be sure you were coming down with Alzheimer's disease. I know I would. So is not knowing better. So these are all personal questions. And again, why anything with any sort of genetic testing, we always encourage genetic counseling with that as well, because results affect people and they really affect you emotionally. So again, just realizing this world that this gene does play a role. We're just not exactly sure as to what the defined role is. So when we think about risk factors, again, trying to modify our risks of developing Alzheimer's disease, really looking at, this is from the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention, and Care. The revised version came out last year in 2020. It first came out in 2017. So realizing that 35% of our dementia risk is in fact modifiable. So obviously early life, or we're looking at these 3 different factors: early life, midlife, and then later life. And then thinking about in your early life, we can't do anything about that now unless we have any people in here who are younger than the age of 18, or we have parents who have children who are under the age of 18. Really encouraging education. Education is an important part, an important foundation for everybody. So that would be 8% of your Alzheimer's risk. Midlife, we're looking at between the ages of 45 and 65. Some of your risk factors are hearing loss, high blood pressure, and obesity. So by taking care of these, getting them under control, this can really help with your midlife Alzheimer's disease risk. And the thing about high blood pressure too, is they realize it's not so much just if someone has high blood pressure, let's say normal should be about here, there, let's say here, they're here. It's the spikes and the peaks and the valleys. It's that really affects the brain more. So if you have high blood pressure, finding a ways to constantly manage it. I know throughout our day, obviously, we're going to have peaks and valleys of our blood pressure, stress, all of that happens, at least most people. But you realize, though, that it does play a part, and trying your best to try to maintain your blood pressure. If you need to be on medication for it, be on medication for it. It makes a lot more sense to do it that way than to try to do it on your own and then fail, because we want to be healthy. And if that has to mean medication, then that's what that means. Later in life, we're looking at smoking, depression, physical inactivity, social isolation, and diabetes. Again, looking at this makes up a big chunk of your Alzheimer's disease risk. So combining all of these, you're at 35% of that you can have an impact on your Alzheimer's disease risk. Last year, 3 new factors were added to this scale, talking about excessive alcohol consumption, head injury, and again, air pollution. So seeing how these are factors that we can really try to take charge of. And it's not always easy. We're not saying this is easy. We're not saying that this is something that right now after this talk, you're going to call your doctor and you're going to make an appointment and you're going to be a picture of health. No, it takes a while. We didn't just get to where we are, and you're not going to just get out of it. It took time to get to where you are, and then it's going to take you time to get out of it as well. So when we think again about some of this world of risk reduction, we're talking the worldwide fingers study. So this is a worldwide study. The website is fingers.com, if you see it down at the bottom of the slide. And so this was a 2-year study out of Finland that focused on several lifestyle factors and vascular risk factors. Because again, we realize our heart and our brain are connected. And so that what is good for the heart is good for the brain. And so we looked at dietary guidance, physical activity, cognitive and training, and social activities. Again, social, that's an important word that keeps coming up. And then also intensive monitoring and management of metabolic and vascular risk factors. Again, that blood pressure, keeping it low, making sure cholesterol is low, and looking at the benefit of this on overall cognitive performance. And so one of the goals, though, of this study is that it is a worldwide study. And so we're taking people from all different countries who live all sorts of different lifestyles and seeing how this can actually be translatable and realistic and sustainable in different countries. You know, you can't tell somebody who lives in Brazil to live a life like someone who lives in Finland. They're different. The food is different. The lifestyles are different. The access to things are different. So realizing how is this actually translatable to real life situations across the country. So here in the United States, we have a version called the US Pointer Study. Sorry, I skipped ahead. And that's out of the Alzheimer's Association, the national organization. And they have they're recruiting for that trial. One of the other parts of this trial is looking at the world of diet, right? You know, the right ways to eat. You know, the Mediterranean diet is something that is consistently promoted for heart health and for brain health. Oh shoot, sorry a second. I moved something and now I have the big Q&A chat right in front of my face. Okay, here, I'm gonna see if I can get rid of that. Okay, pardon me while I'm trying to, oh, see. All right, so this is my problem sometimes. Okay, so Mediterranean diet. So heart healthy fish, you know, fish that is in omega-3 fatty acids. We want good high fat fish. So we're looking at more cold water fish. Fruits and vegetables, of course, green leafy vegetables, high in antioxidants, you know, especially, you know, you think we're coming out of it, but summertime fruits, the berries, you know, making your plate colorful, olive oil, again, good fats is that what we want to incorporate. You know, years ago, it was in the 80s where fats were bad, right? No olive oil, no avocado, that was all bad for you because it was high in fat. But we've now realized the importance of good fat. And so incorporating that in your diet, nuts, beans, and red wine in moderation. When I used to give this presentation in person and I'd talk about the Mediterranean diet and I'd ask people, well, do you subscribe to the diet? Do you try to follow it in any way? And I always loved it when I'd get the responses from people who'd raise their hand and they say, well, I partake in the wine part of it. So again, red wine in moderation, and it's a glass, not a glass. You know, you can get some of those glasses that are practically a whole bottle. That's not your ideal here. So we want to make sure that things, again, moderation is one of the really big key words, especially thinking about your overall heart health, which coincides with your brain health. So I think this is super exciting. And so again, it's a busy, busy slide. So, but we're talking about exercise. I know it's a word that not everyone likes. It is a word that often people try to shy away from. But we've realized that exercise is associated with increased brain volume, and then improved memory. So what does that mean? So this study had recruited older adults over the age of 65. They put them in two separate groups. One was a group that did cardiovascular exercise, and the other was a stretching group. And again, stretching is good for balance, coordination, to help with fall risk. So at the beginning of the study, they gave everyone an MRI to measure their brains. At 6 months, they did another study, or they did another MRI, and then at 1 year, they did another MRI. So for the people who were in the cardiovascular exercise group, they actually noticed an substantial growth in this part of the brain, which is called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that is responsible for turning short-term memories into long-term memories. It's also the part of the brain where often Alzheimer's disease, the atrophy that is associated with Alzheimer's, is first noticed. So you see how by doing exercise, you're able to actually grow the brain and to be able to help against, help with your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. If you have a good, strong hippocampus that is nice and robust, the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease will be pushed back a little bit more. So it's a really great evidence to show why exercise is important. So exercise, we use this word. So I'm not talking about a gym membership. I'm not talking about, getting a fancy piece of equipment that you're not going to use. I'm talking about walking, getting the heart rate up, exercising a little bit, moving around in your home. Nowadays, everything's on Zoom, obviously, and you can do Zoom exercise classes. And the point is just to get the heart rate up. So if you go for a walk, actually go for a walk, not just a stroll. You want to be able to talk clearly while you are walking. So you don't want to be, and so it's really hard. At that point, you're pushing it, you're going too far. But you might want to just have a quicker breath, where it actually, your heart rate is beating fast enough that your breath is affected, but you're still able to carry on a conversation. So that's sort of the sweet spot that you should look for. And again, it changes with everybody because everyone has different abilities in terms of their own exercise, their own cardiovascular health. So again, really think about exercise, increasing the amount. So if you don't exercise at all, tomorrow, 10-minute walk around your house. In the height of COVID, a colleague of mine would literally walk around her living room. And she said she made everyone in her family nuts because she would literally walk around her living room, just circles and circles and circles, because she didn't want to go outside. She was scared and uncertain, but she still wanted to keep up exercising. So she would literally walk around in circles in her living room. So hopefully your living room is bigger than hers, or maybe you have some stairs in your house and you could, again, get some exercise to help increase your brain volume. So this was a study, and I apologize, I just realized I did not cite the source on the bottom of this. This actually came from the Alzheimer's Association International Conference from this year. So this was I think August. So this is August or July, one of the two. So really new research that is coming out talking about air quality. And again, for people who live in Los Angeles, I know lots of the people here, maybe a little bit more Ventura County. So maybe your air is a little bit better. But looking at the world of improving air quality and how it can actually reduce dementia risk. So they're looking at different cities at long-term exposure to air pollutants, and how this also was associated with higher beta amyloid, again, that amyloid plaque that I talked about at the beginning, higher amyloid levels in the blood. So, and they see that this could create a possible connection between air quality and the physical changes that happen with Alzheimer's disease. And also, there's a number of studies that came out. So if you want more information on this, it's Alzheimer or alz.org. slash AAIC, which is their Alzheimer's Association International Conference. They have a lot of articles came out about this. It was in the news. So if you are up on your newspapers and on your, maybe you read about it as well. And then they're talking about the world of improving air quality and over an extended period of time. So how can we clean up the air in cities, in other areas? Central California, they're known for really bad air because of the way that the states, sort of the bowl of the state there, and how that can actually impact dementia risk, especially when they're looking at like fine particulate matter. So more reasons for, taking, having cleaner vehicles, cleaning up the air, because it also can help with our own dementia risk. So this came out in 2017. I thought this study was so interesting, talking about sleep and Alzheimer's. So many people, our society struggles with sleep, I think. We're told to stay up late, stay up late because you're going to watch the next really important thing. So don't turn off your TV. But really, is that what you're staying up for? Is it that important? So this came out of Wheaton College. Again, this was released through the Alzheimer's Association International Conference in 2017, talking about the connections between people with breathing disorders such as sleep apnea, and then the accumulation again of these amyloid plaques. So we all have these plaques, as I mentioned, but at night, when you're sleeping, is when your brain rests, when your body heals itself from the damage that we have done to it from the day before. And we realize that people who have interrupted sleep, either through sleep apnea or other ailments, they have an increased level of plaque. And that's because at that time when their body is sleeping, it's not able to clear out the plaque that has accumulated throughout the day. So they realized that people with breathing disorders had a greater increase of these plaque deposits over a 3-year period of time. And then they also went on to have a greater risk of developing Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. So again, focusing on this world of sleep, making sure that you're in a good, proper environment, a little bit cooler room, lights off, stay away from the blue screens, and too far before bed, so your body can start to reset and start to get ready for sleep. If you have problems with sleep, then talk to your doctor about it. It's very important for it to be addressed so that you can be more of a greater optimal health. So this is a study, I'm just going to super quickly talk about this. So one of in the world of Alzheimer's disease, one of the tools for detection is called a PET scan, PET, positron emission tomography. Well, these are really expensive. Most people don't want to pay for them. And insurance, hit and miss on if it covers it. So this is a study that is actually sponsored through Medicare that is seeing on if they should in fact cover PET scans, and looking to see if doctors actually change their medical management of a patient because of the results of this PET scan. So when they did the first round of this study in 2016, they realized that 2/3 of the clinicians actually did change the medical management, either in terms of medication, either in terms of diagnosis. And so now they're doing a new wave of this study, focusing a little bit more on diversity, focusing on people with early onset Alzheimer's. So this would be people who wouldn't even be Medicare eligible. So these are people before the age of 65. And then again, focusing on the world of the APOE gene. So, okay, shifting over to medications. And so currently, actually, I need to update this. No, I'm good. Okay, so this is what our tried and true medications have been for a number of years. My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. She was diagnosed back in the 90s, and she was on Aricept. So we see how long ago that was. So, Aricept, Razodine, Exelon, Namenda, there's Namzaric, but that's just a combination of the two medications. So it's one pill. Exelon has a patch, a transdermal patch. So if people have GI issues relating to side effects, that bypasses that. But then just this year, we were, come on, Come on, screen. Okay, so none of these have been known to slow the course of Alzheimer's. They're purely symptomatic. But then just this year, a new medication was FDA approved. It's called Aduhelm. The medication is aducanumab, and it's for people with mild cognitive impairment or early stage Alzheimer's disease. So this, as I'm sure if you're here on this presentation, this isn't just a casual presentation that people just show up to like, oh, I've got nothing else to do. Let me listen to an Alzheimer's research talk. So you probably are aware of the world of aducanumab and the controversy that surrounds it. So so this was a study that was going on for a number of years, studying this medication. At UCLA, we were a site for it. But in March of 2019, Biogen, the company, announced that they were stopping the study. They were stopping it due to disappointing results in a futility analysis. So we were surprised, lots of the patients were surprised. And ultimately, Biogen wasn't really sure about this world. Like, is this right? Did this really fail? Or why did we stop it? So they reanalyzed the study. And then they submitted those results to the FDA for approval. So I could talk specifically about this medication for easily 20 minutes because there's lots of little nuances about it. There's lots of, there were a few different studies going on at the same time. But where we're at currently with the medication is that it was, again, FDA approved in June, but there's also a little tiny asterisk next to it, is that approval is requiring a phase 4 study. And the goal of that study is to reduce amyloid as well as slow the cognitive decline. So that is where some of the questions exist, is if it does reduce amyloid, but how much cognitive decline does it really slow? Like, how much does it really slow a person's decline down? We're looking at wanting to reduce some of the dementia symptoms, so then someone would have a higher quality of life. But also we're looking at this as an incredibly expensive medication. It's an infusion medication that requires monthly infusions. So there's access issues in terms of who's going to a medical center for that time. It is not currently covered by Medicare. Medicare is reviewing it right now to see at what percentage they will cover it, or if they will. So lots of people say, like, it's very exciting for science, but maybe not as hopeful or as exciting for everyday people. So this, and I think for any of us who have a loved one with Alzheimer's disease, it's like, what happens in the brain is one thing. I just really care about what happens at my home, right? I care about the behavioral symptoms, the clinical symptoms, as opposed to some of those real biological changes that occur. So when they looked at aducanumab, when it was initially during its trials, these are some of the images from the PET scan, again, that positron emission tomography scan that they took of the participants. So this section over here, these 4 images of the brain are at baseline. So this is when the study started. And then this is 1 year later. For the people who were on the placebo medication, you see it's pretty similar. A little bit of changes, a little bit of increase in the amyloid. For people who are on the 3 milligrams, like the red is the amyloid, and you see how that's really cleared out. People who are on the 6 milligrams, that also really cleared out. Look at the people who are on the 10. The amyloid pretty much completely clears out. So they did see that the medication cleared out the amyloid. There are, of course, side effects, especially if people are APOE positive or E4 positive. And then also looking at, well, how long would somebody have to take this to continue to see the benefits? So questions, again, that's why it's in a phase 4, or they're doing the phase 4 study of it. At UCLA currently, if somebody insisted that they wanted to be a part of this and to get this medication, we are working on trying to figure out exactly what those steps would be. And it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. So it would obviously also have to be private pay. So, but it's the first new medication in about 17 years. So when we think about the medications that we currently have, you know, we look at this trajectory of somebody with untreated Alzheimer's disease. Currently, the symptomatic treatment, let's say through the Aricept or the Exelon or the Namenda, gives someone a little bit of a bump up, but then they still progress along the same course. And then somebody with a disease modifying drug, which is what we are hoping for and what we are aiming for, would really almost like, yes, they would still decline, but they'd have a much higher quality of life for a much longer period of time. And so this green line, if not even being able to pop it back up a little bit, would be one of the goals. So when we think about research, you know, I've been in this field now for 20 years. People have said that there's going to be a cure for Alzheimer's disease in the next 5 to 10. But they also said that about 15 years ago and about 10 years ago. And so look where we're at now. So, but we have seen the change in terms of increasing confidence with diagnosis. My grandmother was diagnosed with probable Alzheimer's. I look back upon it now, and she had had a significant stroke before her Alzheimer's diagnosis. So she probably had vascular dementia as well as Alzheimer's. So these types of looking at the biomarkers, looking for that amyloid either in cerebral spinal fluid or through a PET scan. Those are some really great changes that have happened. MRIs can now measure the volume of the brain. So if someone's having cognitive loss and they do an MRI and they notice that the frontal part of a person's brain is more atrophied, then most likely they have frontal temporal dementia, not Alzheimer's disease. Again, different courses, different symptoms. And then again, looking at the world of PET scans. So there has been significant changes in terms of being able to properly diagnose. In terms of drugs, you know, these are two drugs that are in clinical trials. We were a site and we're still an ongoing site, just not recruiting for this one, BAN 2401. Again, looking at reducing the amyloid, as well as slowing cognitive decline. Again, we want both of those pieces. We don't just want to clear amyloid. Okay, well, if someone still progresses, then what's the point of clearing the amyloid? We want to be able to give better quality of life longer. It supports the amyloid hypothesis, again, looking at how that is the bad guy versus the tau or the tangles. And then how this year they started a phase 3 study studying this medication and focusing on people with early Alzheimer's disease. This next medication, the Anavex 2-73, again, super small study. So I'm not touting this in any way. This is a great medication, this will work. It's 32 people. But I use this as an example in terms of the world of realizing that maybe with Alzheimer's, we need more of a precision medication as opposed to, okay, you get 25 milligrams. Nope, 25, okay, 50. Maybe someone needs 42. Maybe they need more of that cocktail of drugs, the precision medication that really came around a lot during AIDS, the AIDS epidemic in the 80s. And looking at this world like one size fits all may not actually be the case for Alzheimer's disease. And so it might be a little bit more specific in terms of what is needed for patients to really help with improving cognition. Again, here's that slide. I told you I'd bring it back. And so where we're looking for clinical trials is we're looking here. Gone are the days of looking over here. We know someone's too progressed. We can't reverse some of the changes that have occurred. But here, maybe we can. So this is the area in which we're looking. I talked about the PET scan. I'm just going to skip this. Here's this slide. This is an example of a study that we have called the A4 study, which is looking for people without Alzheimer's disease symptoms, but might be who are at risk in some way, to see, how can we truly change the course of this disease. Oops. Come on, slide, next slide. There we go. And I'm actually just going to skip some of this just due to time. I want to get to questions. So some of the things that we have learned during clinical trials is that we need to evaluate people earlier, as I mentioned, realizing that the world of tau, or those tangles, can also be really associated with cognitive decline. Again, we need more diversity. The vast majority of our clinical trials are done by white men, white men who are our participants. Oh, I knew my dog would bark at one point. See, it always just happens. Hold on. And believe it or not, my dog never barks. Okay, see, this is why I was telling Martha happens. All right, also looking at, multiple approaches are needed here. We need to come up with lots of different ways. It's not just cut and dry, here's your Aricept. We need a lot more different types of options to really be able to truly help with this disease and really try to make a difference in the long run. So at UCLA, we do have, as I mentioned, our research center, always looking for participants. We're site USC. I know most of you probably are not quite close to either of us. We have people who come in from Santa Barbara. So really looking at the world of needing the recruitment. So if you are at all interested, we ask for people to fill out a form or just send an email. And that just gives us permission to talk to you. That's it. You can hang up on us afterwards, but it just gives us a permission to talk to you. So that is the email address to send just an email with your name and phone number. If you are interested in any sort of clinical trial or participating in research, because we need people. We're not going to be able to cure this disease or figure this out or prevent this disease without participants in our studies. These are some of the resources for local clinical trials. Clinicaltrials.gov. I always say it's a terrible website. It's not user-friendly at all, but that is the best one for all types of clinical trials, everything from diabetes to cancer to glaucoma. So any clinical trial that's happening is listed on that website. You can search in by your zip code and to see what is available. Obviously, our website with our phone number as well as our information. The NIA, which is the National Institute on Aging, and the National Institute on Health. They run trials. Lots of our trials are actually sponsored by them. And then again, USC. I say that we work very closely with USC in terms of Alzheimer's research. We just do not work well on the football field, but any other way, we are partners and collaborators with them. And then, so what should you do in the meantime? Okay, after this presentation, what should you do? You should exercise. Sorry about that, but it's important. It's something that's good to incorporate into your life, and baby steps, and do what works for you. If I say, okay, everyone, we need to start running. Well, I don't run. I really don't like running at all. But maybe I'll ride a bike. Maybe I'll swim. Maybe I'll take a Zumba class online in my living room. So finding something that we're able to do to increase your heart rate. Trying to eat a healthy diet, incorporate just more fruits and vegetables into your diet, stay away from processed food, focus on lean meats. Again, eat, what's good for good for the brain, good for the heart. Finding a good, following something like the American Heart Association diets are really good. People will ask a lot, what's the best diet and what's the best plan? It's like, well, the best one is the one that you're going to stick with. So if you need to eat if you're going to add more vegetables, but you still want that cookie, well, then you know what, keep that cookie if that's going to be like your gift after you've eaten those extra vegetables. Just make sure it's one cookie and maybe a little smaller than the big cookie. So also looking at ways to stay active cognitively, socially, and physically, even in this world that we're in now, depending upon everyone's levels of comfort in terms of being with others, but finding a way to still make connections. It helps reduce your risk of depression, which depression increases your risk of dementia. So really looking at this world of trying to take care of yourself in all different aspects. Address medical conditions and your mental health. Sometimes people will go into the doctor thinking that they might have dementia, but it's actually a medication interaction. It might be a thyroid disorder. It could be dehydration. So there's lots of other reversible forms of dementia. So talking to your doctor and really seeing what your situation is, getting regular sleep, as I've mentioned, stress reduction. we're all stressed. There's a lot that's going on in our world and in our lives, but finding a way to breathe, even if it's for 1 minute, and participating in a trial, and also working with your own doctor to try to find a way that is successful for you. This is our information. Again, this is my email address. Please email me if you have any questions. I am happy to help in any way that I can. This is our clinical trials phone number. I would give you mine, but I'm not in the office. So don't call me there. Send me an email. I have a tendency of getting locked out of my voicemail, so it's not good anyways. So send me an email, and I'm truly more than happy to talk to you and see how I can help you with any questions that you have, or if you are caring for someone with dementia. And then that is it. So I'm going to go back to my slide here. And if you have any questions, I see that we have one in the Q&A. And now's your chance to type in any extra questions that you might have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was so interesting, and it does kind of lead to wanting to discuss it more, but you had a way of explaining the new medication that was really helpful for me, because I've read some articles and I'm not a research person, so it was confusing. So that really made a lot of sense. I appreciate that.
Good, because it's really confusing. The number of hours and the number of presentations that I have been in. I'm actually going to turn off the screen share so we can just see each other here. And then a little bit easier for me too. So many questions. Like, we've been in hour-long meetings about the new medication, and there's still lots of questions about it. So
definitely. Well, thank you. We do have some questions, and people can feel free to type them in as they think of them. One was, would today's slides be available? And Monica has graciously offered that she will email them to me. So tomorrow I will email them to all of you that registered with your email address. And we're also recording today's seminar. So I will also include a link so that you can watch this recording or share it with friends and family. And then on that slide, as you saw, does include also her contact information and her email address. So that answered two of those questions. Then the other one says, do you have thoughts on cryotherapy, oxygen hyperbaric therapy?
I do not.
Okay.
Just being very honest, again, one of the great challenges that say I'm faced with personally is the world that there's so much research being done all over the world for Alzheimer's. And I'm not a scientist. I am a community health person. So I don't see lots of the things. Whoever said that you can forward me the article, I would love to read it. That would be great. So if you could, I'd be happy to read that article, but I don't have any thoughts on it. Again, there's so many different studies that sometimes it's just hard personally to keep up on lots of them. So any information you can send to me, I'm always appreciative of that.
Perfect, thank you. Which do you cite as best case study or treatment success, or citation of slowing progression?
Again, that's another really hard question to answer. There's a lot of different studies out there that talk about, in terms of treatment success. To be very honest, there's never been anyone cured from Alzheimer's disease. There are people who may have had cognitive impairment and their cognitive impairment improved, but it wasn't cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease. And I think that's a really important thing to mention, because, if you had a personal trainer, a nutritionist, a cognitive health coach taking care of you, would you do better? Oh, right. Yeah, we all would, right? So when some of these studies where they say people are on all these different regimens and they're on all these different pills and supplements, well, they're also being really being monitored by top experts that most of us don't even just have that access to. And they probably don't have Alzheimer's. They probably just have a different type of cognitive impairment. So there is a difference for that. So in terms of the best case study, or treatment success. I don't have anything along those lines. Again, the Alzheimer's Association, their website is very good. And you can search under their publications, or they also have a research tab as well. Go in there and you can take a look. But unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't have that for you. And then I'm reading the next one about to reduce plaque. Does apple cider vinegar? You know, lots of these things, it's like, yes, is apple cider vinegar good? I personally believe so. But is it good for your world of Alzheimer's disease? There hasn't been anything that has really stated or has given a one-to-one, correlation on that. Is it good? Is it helpful? Yes, it's good for your body. It's good for your digestion. So then maybe can it help with your gut microbiome that can then help with your overall Alzheimer's and cognitive challenges or struggles? Yes. But is there a direct connection? Nothing that I have read.
This one is a good question. It says, you mentioned Namenda doesn't work after a certain period of time. Is it important to stop the medication after that period of time? Like, is there any harm if you kept taking it?
So I didn't say that Namenda doesn't work after a certain period of time. It's just what it does. Like for all the medications, Namenda, Aricept, Exelon, just like any other medication, if you take it for a long time, sometimes the effectiveness does wear off. Mm-hmm. Also with Alzheimer's disease, again, it is a progressive disorder. It is progressive. So if somebody is on Namenda and let's say were diagnosed, they went on Namenda, and I'm just making up these numbers, so don't hold me to these, and say 5 years after they were diagnosed, and now they're 10 years into their disease, would Namenda still help them? I don't know, because it depends upon that person. Maybe they have progressed so greatly that now giving them the medication is actually a struggle and it's actually a challenge. Then what are you trying to fight for? Because the Namenda is not a cure. It's not going to cure the disease. So why are you still giving it? And this is an actual question. Like, why? Do you believe it's helping? Does your doctor believe it's helping? Do you feel that you have seen improvements? And again, these are personal questions to answer. So it's really a conversation between you and the clinician of the person with dementia.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Fair enough. I was thinking about this one too. Can you confirm that the research confirmed the importance of cardio exercise versus stretching? Like you talked about cardio being seeing all the wonderful differences. Did stretching not make those wonderful differences?
Correct. No. Again, stretching, very good for balance, for coordination. But in terms of brain health, it did not have the same benefits as the cardio did. So, when people say, give me one exercise, it's, well, I sort of can't, because what is your goal? Do you want brain health? Do you want flexibility? Do you want to prevent fall risk? All of these are good. Mm-hmm. So it's, again, finding the world of incorporating all of the exercises. But when we're talking about purely brain health, cardio exercise is the best.
How much cardio? Is there a threshold?
What I think I hear, gosh, what is it? And I'm really bad at numbers. I just don't have that brain. Yeah, I think is it 30 minutes 3 times a week? I think that's the magic equation, but sort of setting that as your minimum. Again, if you could do 30 minutes 5 times a week, that would be ideal. If you could do 60 minutes 5 times a week, of course. But the important part is to do what you will do. Mm-hmm. So if I say, hey, Martha, you need 45 minutes of cardio every day, and Martha's like, oh my gosh, I can barely get 20 in. Mm-hmm. Well, then do 20. Do 2 10-minute walks. Yeah. So finding the ways to do what works for you, as opposed to setting a goal that may be unattainable.
It's so true. When we set those big goals and we can't do all of it, we do none of it. Mm-hmm. It's mind games. So yes.
Oh yeah. A few years ago, I got a Fitbit, and the whole purpose behind this was to tell me to get up and to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Because it'll buzz at me 10 minutes before an hour if I haven't done, I think, 250 steps in an hour.
Yeah.
So it will yell at me, be like, hey, Monica, get up, like move around. And then it also gives me little goals. Okay, so I have it set for 10,000 steps every day. Well, some days I look at it and it's 7 o'clock at night and I'm at 6.5. It's 6,500. I'm like, well, I'm not making the 10 today. I'm just not even going to push it. But it gives you that world also something to be accountable for, as opposed to, oh, I walked a lot. But then you realize, well, how much did you really walk? You may not have walked much at all, just your own perspective. So again, finding those little things that help and those little things that really work for you, because we're all individuals and what we like to do is all so different. And again, we're not saying that yoga isn't good for you. We're just saying that, for brain health, it may not, like, unless it's one that really gets your heart rate up. So just realizing that there is a difference between that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, I started tracking how much water I was drinking. I thought I drank so much water until I actually started writing it down.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how long are the clinical trials if you become a participant?
Every trial is different. It all depends upon what their goals are and what they're studying. Some trials, so that 1A4 study that I talked about, it was initially, I think, a 3-year study, and it has been extended and it's been extended. So I think now they're in year 5. So, do you have to continue? No, not at all. But that is so all the trials are different based upon their own, the criteria of what they're looking for. Some are 6 months, some are, for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So it depends upon what they're studying.
Okay, we have 2 final questions and then we'll finish up. So I know we're a little bit over. And if other questions pop up, then you all have just been provided her direct email and you all have my email, so you can reach out. Does this information also apply for people with Lewy body dementia?
So some of the basic research stuff does not. Again, Lewy body is different. It is different proteins in the brain. They're Lewy bodies, not the plaques and the tangles of Alzheimer's disease. Also, the progression of the disease is different. I would say the sleep aspect is probably the one that can be closely associated with Lewy body dementia, because lots of people with Lewy body dementia have sleep disturbances, and so that could affect them. So in terms of the brain health aspect of what I was talking about, definitely, we're talking about all different types of dementia. We're talking about vascular dementia. We're talking about Lewy body. We're talking about frontotemporal. We want to be able to help stimulate our brains as much as we can. And whether that is through diet and exercise, it's still beneficial for all types of dementias.
Okay. And how do the medications help with the symptoms without affecting the course of the disease?
Great question, Jean. Absolutely. That's such a challenging question. It can be very confusing. So the symptoms that we talk about, let's say, would be the memory, memory loss, agitation, irritability. So the medications can help with those, but the course of the disease is still happening. So let's say if we think about it in terms of, it's always a hard analogy to be able to do. Let's say if someone has chronic arthritis, like the medications is going to help with the pain. It's going to help take some of the pain away, but the arthritis still exists. So it's not curing the arthritis. It's not, having that go away because you're taking a pill. It's just helping with the pain. So it's more symptom management. The hallmarks, the Alzheimer's, the amyloid plaques and the tangles are still accumulating in the brain and are still affecting the cognition, but just someone is able to work at a little bit higher of a level because of the medications. So I hope that helps. But with the world of dementia, I always liken it to the world of pain, because pain, I think we can all understand. Like, either is it a headache? Is it a broken bone? Is it childbirth? Like, there's lots of different types of pain. Some go away, some don't. And their course of treatment is all different as well. And so again, that's the same thing of this world of dementia. So looking at it from a standpoint of, the medication can help with the symptom, which is the dementia, but it does not help with the actual progression of the Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, thank you.
Clear as mud, I'm sure. So yes.
Really, just thank you so much for your time. And it's true that in this world of Zoom, we're able to have you present to our community, which we might normally not have been able to get you to drive all this way. So really appreciate it. This has been so helpful. I will get those slides out and the recording to everybody, hopefully tomorrow or the next day. I do want to let everyone know that our next seminar will be on October 19th. And that one will be legal and financial planning for Alzheimer's disease. And so we're presenting it in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, and we'll have an elder law attorney come and speak to that. So if you do, know somebody who has some dementia, then what type of legal paperwork do you need to get in order? So it's really practical and important information for you and your family.
And also, I'm just going to give a plug. That's just good information for anybody anyways, because we don't know what our own futures are going to be. So it's best, to get all that kind of stuff taken care of, and, plan for dementia and hope that it doesn't happen. And so really just think about, like, that's good. Martha, I'm going to plug that one for you, because that's a really great presentation for anybody, whether you know someone with Alzheimer's disease or not. So everyone should attend.
So true. It's so true. And frankly, when people wait too long, then you can no longer get those documents. So better to do it ahead of time before you need them.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all of you for joining us today. Thank you, Monica. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. You too, Martha. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.